I'm Rob Dietz.
I'm Jason Bradford.
And I'm Asher Miller. And welcome to Crazy Town, where the future looks like the past, only shittier.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Asher. How are you guys doing?
Meh. I'm a meh today.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna pull you up from Maland and
Tell me a story.
I'm gonna invite you into a story. How'd you know?
That's what you
Is
do.
it story time
It's
and
like
then
the
we could do nap?
It's like
Yes.
it's like that time of day.
Yeah,
Yes.
story time and then nap
It's a
time.
summer, warm
and
summer day.
for our three listeners, they get nap time immediately
Exactly.
as I begin this story.
Why do you think they're listening?
Yeah.
Your voice is so soothing.
Yes. So let me set the scene here in Crazy Town. So I do want to give you the setting first, okay? This is near my house where I live in Portland.
Yeah, been there.
So you've actually seen this. There is a parking lot. I believe I've mentioned it before, but there's a parking lot very close to home, like probably 100 yards as the
Had it
crow
been
flies.
Paradise before that and then they paved it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And Joni Mitchell does concerts there every day.
Is this at the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
It is near some kind of church.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Seventh-day Adventist.
Anyway, there's a public parking lot along a main thoroughfare of the city of
Or
Portland.
is it Jehovah's Witness?
Jehovah's Witness, sure.
Is that what it is?
I believe
you
it is.
should know.
Yes.
You're trying to get our listeners to be able to triangulate so they know
Yeah,
exactly where
right.
Rob lives and they're going to show up at his door.
Oh, it'll be great. We'll start a cult. Okay, so this parking lot, which I've taken to calling Camelot, just because it has a fantastical name. Hopefully that's not insensitive.
Okay.
During the pandemic, it became the site of regular encampments for houseless people. So
Yeah, I remember that.
They were setting up tents, parking RVs.
And it wasn't like that before COVID?
No. Running generators. And it became a real mess. I mean, there were a lot of people, taking a crap there. There was litter. Like at one point, it seriously looked like a huge garbage dump.
This is a parking spot, though, also for for public transport. This was like a place people would drop their car and then get on buses. I think
you could do that,
was
or
the
it was
idea.
supposed to be parking to go to a nearby business. That kind of stuff.
So there were businesses right there too?
Yeah.
across the street.
And one of them ended up closing because it just got to be too much for them, I think. But and there were problems. There were drug dealers that I regularly saw there. There were people openly shooting up, and it's near a middle school. All this stuff, and
Let me look up the Zillow price on your home right now.
culminated in a murder.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
What?
somebody was shot there, and scary stuff.
Jesus.
And at that point, I think with the murder, the city said, "Okay, we got to put an end to this." And so the group in charge, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, brought in these big highway blocks and kind of put them in this parking area to sort of disrupt the amount of space where you could put a tent or an RV. And started doing a little more enforcement, like, okay, you can't camp here.
So there's 40 campsites gone, but they just moved somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know where the people had to move to.
Right.
But in the aftermath of that, it's been quieter. I haven't seen much drug trade. So
it's really changed. There are fewer people there and stuff?
yeah.
There's nobody there. I was there recently. It was like...
People still do come in, though, occasionally. So I've told you guys that my number one hobby is getting a trash cart and walking around and picking up litter. So
Yeah, I've seen your setup. It's impressive.
Are you
great.
Are you out of a job now?
No, so this is the problem. Is I walked through there and I was like, oh man, this is bad. I'm gonna clean it up. And so I did that after work one day. It was kind of dusky, getting on towards sunset. And I'm walking through, and back in the corner of Camelot, there was just a pile of donuts, pizzas, and whole sausages.
What?
Like somebody throw it
like-
out or something?
Just like a huge pile of
Not eaten?
Yeah, I mean there were boxes too. They probably ate some, but
It's
just
like the back of a Safeway or something. Someone raided the dumpster.
I have no idea the origins of it, but it was a lot, and so I.
Did you go to town? You're just scarfing?
That is not my method of cleaning up, but I'll try to maybe change
Next
that.
time, Rob.
Yeah, that's
Nothing
better
should be wasted.
recycling, right?
Yeah, don't waste it.
Or put it in a worm compost bin.
Yeah, so I'm picking all this up and putting it in my my cart, and this man starts approaching me, and he's got a cart, and it's got
dueling carts.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one actually. It's a 3-wheeler like those jog strollers that you use with a baby.
Is it electric?
Really?
No. But he had a suitcase sort of attached to it, and this big orange kind of round thing sticking out the top. And he's walking up to me, and I get kind of like, okay, I got to be on alert. Like, who is this guy? I don't know him, and I just want to be, aware of my surroundings. And he walks up to me, and he says, "Hey, are you staying here tonight?" And I said, "No, I'm just live in the neighborhood, and I volunteer to pick up trash every once in a while." And he doesn't look me in the face. He's looking at the ground as he asks that question. And then his response to me telling him what I was doing is he said, "Oh, I was afraid of that."
What?
And I was like, well, I was kind of puzzled. Like, why are you afraid of that? And he was afraid of that because he felt bad that the area was getting trashed. And he goes, "I know who did this. It was Roger. That guy's an asshole." And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't know, but I'm happy to help out in the neighborhood. It sucks that people have to stay out here." And I kind of was feeling bad. I was like, he seemed like a nice enough guy, so I asked him about his tent. The orange thing sticking out the top. I was like, "Is that your tent? Are you staying in that tonight?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he kind of had a little flourish. He pulls it out and like tosses it in the air, and it lands on the ground in a perfectly formed kind of dome.
Oh, as
tent
seen on
thing.
TV.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's freaking awesome.
And,
No setup required.
yeah, I know. I was like, man, I wonder, is that thing waterproof? Like that, pretty. Like I kind of want one of those. You go camping. That'd be pretty wild. But anyway, we were sort of comparing notes on our carts, and he seemed like a nice, non-threatening guy, but it was getting dark, so I told him, "Well, I'm about done here, so I got to go, and you take care, and have a good night." And he's like, "Yeah, you too." So I get my cart and I walk to the other end of this parking lot. It's like 50 yards down, and then I make a left turn down the street, turn the corner, and I'm gonna walk around that corner to my house. And when I get around the corner, I start hearing this just obscenity-laced tirade. He's like, "Fucking blood, fuck, God, fuck!" And I was just like,
this guy.
He was the only one there,
Yeah.
so that's my assumption. I was just like,
What happened?
what just happened? Like,
Was it you?
he was calm, and so here's where we get to the choose your own adventure part of this. So you guys, choose your own adventure books, staple of my childhood.
Yeah, me too.
Books written in the second person. If we have any younger listeners, they were these books you read and they say, you're on this adventure. You're running through the forest and the dinosaurs are chasing you. What do you do? And you get to decide, if you want to jump in the river, go to page 8. If you want to climb a tree, go to page 22.
Sure.
And the story unfolds based on the choices you make.
Right. There's
So-
consequences. This is when they taught kids that there were consequences for their decisions.
That's right. Jump in the river.
When everyone didn't get a trophy.
Yeah. That's right.
Sometimes you made a mistake and you died.
Yes.
Those are the good old days.
That was the problem with Choose Your Own. Half of the plot lines ended in you dying.
And then you got to start
scary.
the book all over again.
Yeah.
That's where reincarnation comes in.
Right. So what do you do? What you guys choose your own adventure. You're me. You've got your pizza, donut, sausage mess cleaned up. You finished talking to this guy, and now he's screaming an obscenity.
Is dinner waiting at home with a cold beer?
The cold beer is probably there. We've already eaten dinner, though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to think. This is what I always do. I try to think about all the options, right? So one option is you ignore, you go home. Another option is you go back and see if he's okay. A third option, I guess, is you call some, because you're concerned. You call somebody,
Right? Yeah. I think those are the three options.
I mean, the truth is, because I'm a coward who also doesn't like interactions with people. I think you're a lot friendlier than I am, Rob. I would worry about the dude. I probably would lose sleep that night. But if I'm going to be completely honest, I probably would be a little worried about going back.
Oh yeah, I'd go home.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. There's no way I would turn around. I'd be like, oh gosh, oh no. Well, he held it together when he was with me. I'm happy for that. now he's having a breakdown, but yeah.
Yeah. So the choose your own then says you both died. I'm sorry.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we both suck as human beings.
Yeah, if you'd have gone back, then that meteor that came down wouldn't have hit you in the head.
The car that came careening around the corner.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so what actually happened, I had the same thoughts as you, which was like, I don't want to go back. Like I got that little jolt of adrenaline, right? Where it's like somebody's suddenly screaming. And it wasn't like painful. It was more like mad.
Right.
Yeah. It sounds mad. Yeah.
So I kind of like stood there for a sec, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going back. Wow. So I walked back.
He's a better guy.
He is better.
This is the whole point of the story. Is he just wants to like.
I know.
Not only us, but whoever's listening to this to be like, Rob's my favorite.
Yeah, Rob's my favorite.
Rob's my favorite.
He's my favorite. He is my favorite. I mean, right now he is. I got to admit that.
Okay, so that is not my motivation. Trust me.
You weren't thinking ahead?
Did not want to go back. And actually, before I tell you what happened, I think your third idea of call somebody else, Portland actually has a street response team with social workers.
SRT.
So it's not like calling the police. It's calling for real help, and that's a reasonable thing to do. So I walked back, and one of the reasons I agreed with myself to do this is I felt like there was a buffer. He was at the other end of this parking lot. I'm not, right up in his face, and I feel like I could probably outrun him too. Although he had a better cart than my cart, so that's iffy. So I go back, and I kind of. With a loud voice so he can hear me, I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And he's like, oh, yeah, that was not aimed at you. I was talking to myself. And yeah, sorry. I was just, I was yelling at myself. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, be kind to yourself too, and he just was really appreciative. He's like, yeah, thanks for caring, and thanks for, being a member of the community, and he just calmed down, and I was like, okay, yeah, you take it easy and have a good night. And I still felt bad walking away, like maybe there's something more I could do for this guy, but that was about as much energy as I had for that. And it just got me thinking more and more about where post-carbon is going with the Great Unraveling. These kind of scenes that I see a lot in Portland where, there's people struggling, and there's litter, and there's drug problems, and there's crime, and, they're cascading because of a lot of external forces that people make bad choices, but also a lot of things aren't their fault. And actually one of the things that man said to me that was interesting, he was saying, a lot of people out here on the streets are struggling with mental illness.
Right. Totally.
He's totally aware of this.
Sounds like schizophrenia. I don't know for sure, but that's the kind of thing you would happen with.
Yeah, I suspect he is too. But seemed like a gentle character, except with himself, like that was amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to share this like scene of the Great Unraveling and say that I think there are ways you can engage. And I really love the report, Cher, that you and Richard wrote on the topic and that I helped to edit. And that's been striking a chord with our audience. So I certainly would want to encourage our listeners to go to postcarbon.org and download that sucker. It's called Welcome to the Great Unraveling. And really good.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like the mutual aid kind of idea as well, a bit where you're directly engaging with somebody rather than expecting that some higher level, institution, the social workers, the bureaucracy will help, that you're taking the lead, not just in communicating with the person, but also in picking up trash.
Right.
So,
right. Sometimes I wonder if it's futile, is this really helping anything? But,
yeah, I'm still stuck on thinking about this dude, man. Just trying to imagine, like, was he starting to yell as soon as you left?
It was when I got around the corner. I was out of sight.
How long do you think that?
Probably like 30, 40 seconds or something.
So, I just like can't help but wonder, was he kind of like yelling at himself because he's playing back in his head the interaction he had with you, and he's like, how much of it had to do with this like social interaction that he had, and maybe how much importance he placed on that social interaction. And he's like, because we've all done this, right? You imagine when you're 15 years old or something like that, talking to a girl, and you're like, and then you leave afterwards, you're like, I fucked that up. I did it so badly. Do you know what I mean? So I'm feeling like this deep empathy for this guy who maybe, I'm totally projecting, but like maybe he's alone, he's struggling with it, he's stuck with his own thoughts a lot. Here he has this interaction with somebody who maybe to him is like somebody who's got it together.
Yeah,
and
cleaning
then
up
he's
after
like,
Roger.
and then he's like just, beating himself up, and
he's doing the Chris Farley thing. I'm stupid. I really have no idea.
I know, I'm just projecting. My heartbreak, all these stories of heartbeat.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been something like, I was hoping to stay here, but this place actually kind of sucks right now. Or, I have no idea.
I mean, we can't know. I will say that I'm not going to give you too much credit. It was a small gesture. It was a small effort that you made, but it was an important effort that you made, right? Like, and I know that, Rob, you've been making this effort in this place. You could have easily, you moved into this new community in Portland, right? You moved up there, you got this house, and COVID hits like months later or whatever, weeks later, right? And everyone's hunkering down.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you see like around the corner, very close to your home, right? Where you live with your wife and two daughters, sometimes three daughters, and like whose safety you're concerned about. And you're seeing this devolving shit show happening around the corner. And I think many people, we're conditioned to think that problem is over there. Yeah. Or I can't get engaged with this thing because I'll just get sucked in. It's not safe. Yeah. Or if I go a little bit, then I have to go all the way.
Right.
And I can't do that.
How much help are they going to ask me to do? Right.
Yeah. So you rationalize all the reasons why you stay out. And you never did that. You went in, and obviously you're concerned about your safety, but you're like trying to clean up, and you're...
Well, let's also note one of my characteristics, which is I can deal with disgusting shit. So actually that same day, I picked up a dead cat off the corner. And it's like, I noticed it there and it's starting to get bigger, right? It's bloating. And I'm like,
Jeez.
Well...
Where are the vultures?
Well, so that was the thing.
Did Roger put it there?
I wanted to get this cat, but I had another cat that I picked up that was like 30 feet long. I mean, it had been picked into a... And we have coyotes in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So... but I seem to be a little less squeamish about that stuff. So I feel like it's a service I can provide without taking as much of a beating as somebody else.
That's great that you have that self-awareness
nice.
you're willing to do it. But I'm just giving you some props here because I think it's really easy. And I have been guilty many, many times in my life of sort of looking the other way with all of these rationalizations for why we do that, right?
Yeah.
And I think to your point, we're now in this situation where... maybe it's come for all of us in the sense that the things that many of us have been privileged enough to keep invisible in terms of the suffering of people and the planet, from the just being put in the maw of this fucking machine that we've created, right?
Yeah.
Has been invisible to a lot of us. In fact, we pay good money to keep it invisible, right? For
Exactly.
these systems
That's
to
what
work.
Our taxes are for.
And now it's sort of like unavoidable on some level, right? For many of us. And we have this choice of like, do we reckon with it? Maybe we're the ones who are suffering from it. Do we basically try to be in denial? And it is a choose your own adventure situation for all of us. So yes, the great unraveling, it's coming for all of us. We are all going to have to navigate it. We are faced with choices. One of those choices of many choices is how do we practice mutual aid? Do we come to the support and aid of others? But how do we do that in a way where we're actually caring for ourselves as well? Because that's the other thing you do is like, I went through this phase when I was in my late teens, early 20s, where I felt like, and this was OCD. Like I didn't know this at the time, but it was definitely like borderline OCD. I felt like I had to pick up every piece of litter and garbage I saw. So And I would actually be, not to the degree that this guy would like, he was yelling at himself.
That's what Rob's doing now.
I kind of.
No, I choose which litter to pick up.
I didn't feel like I had a choice. I felt like it was almost existential. Like if I didn't do it, it was basically like a failure.
It was going to choke a turtle or something.
Or no, it wasn't even just that. It was like I had given up. Do you know what I mean? And it would be a slippery slope or whatever. So for like a year, dude,
How much? Do you
I
think
never
you picked
got
up?
anywhere.
How much do you think you picked up?
A lot.
Yeah.
Because it was just there.
So
around,
wait, how did you do that? Like, was it dispersed enough that you could just grab a piece and stick it in your pocket? Or
we're just talking about litter. We're not talking. I wasn't going to homeless encampments with like piles of shit everywhere.
Well, he didn't have a cart like you.
Yeah, you weren't like a bag man.
No. I didn't go that way, but I just was like, oh, I see a piece of litter.
Yeah.
Do I just ignore it? And I felt like I couldn't do that, and I obsessed over it. And I remember Rob, you talking about how you were without a car for a while, and you had to bike everywhere, and it was a fucking pain in the ass sometimes, to do it, and maybe you had felt like, I've got to do this. It's like all or nothing sort of situation, and
that was like a political choice. I think similar to yours.
Right.
Like I was so fed up with the idea of we need to get off of cars and stop using them that I was like, I can do my morally superior. Haha, look at me. I'm a cyclist. I'm better than all of you. But like you get to that point where my daughter's sick and I've hooked up the trailer and I'm sick and I'm taking her to a doctor's appointment in the rain and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
And meanwhile, everyone else is zooming
splashing
by
me in their Canyonero or whatever.
SUV, I mean, the reason I bring this up is like, it's easy to sort of to say it's like an all or nothing proposition in a sense. And I think a lot of people feel that way about.
You're saying it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like do what you can.
I think the hardest thing is for it to not be all or nothing.
So, set a boundary, but do something.
And that's why, like, navigating that space of, like, how do we care for others? How do we care and practice empathy while not basically sacrificing ourselves entirely to maybe, I'm not going to call this, like, quixotic, this is a pointless exercise. But, it's easy to be like, I'm going to die on this fucking hill.
Yeah, it's more Sisyphean than quixotic, right?
I have issues where, so my wife happens to work with people that often don't have health insurance, and she sees people who, English is not their first language, and they're often, coming from difficult situations, and she's a healthcare provider for those people. So every day she's like in the midst of conversations with folks like that.
Yeah.
And when she comes home, she wants it to be like a retreat. Like she does not want. So the problem is that sometimes what I would do is I would like bring stuff home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it would be like, no.
Yeah, I can't take anymore.
No. Yeah. I do this work. I don't want anybody around to bother me. Like I don't want to have any obligations. I don't want to have to feel like I have to be present with somebody besides my family, And so it's interesting. Is like I've had to back off of like dragging any sort of thing from the outside in to some extent, or just keeping things at a little bit more distance because of that.
Yeah.
So it's great. So I let her handle that stuff, and I feel fine.
And then you can unload during this podcast instead of unloading with her. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that this is one of the challenges for us. We have to practice mutual aid. So we should actually talk about what that even means, right? I mean, mutual aid, you brought that up, Jason. Like, the truth of the matter is we could come up with a term for it. We can call it mutual aid. We could talk about the roots of it, ultimately what we're talking about is the way the human communities have practiced, living community for forever, right?
Yeah.
It's basically about, if you look at indigenous communities and you understand their history and their culture, of necessity, basically, people are not left to their own devices to succeed or fail, right? It's together. Our victories are shared, our suffering and our failures are shared, and seeing that we live in a world where everything is mutual. And we could go back to the biology of that, the mitochondria that's in our, in our cells, right? Like it's all mutualism ultimately, but we just divorce ourselves in a sense from that. But many communities of necessity practice.
I no longer have mitochondria
No,
in my
you don't?
cells.
Exactly.
They've gotten a divorce. So.
Well, yeah, I think it's in some ways it's ironic. I think that the wealthier you are, the more likely it is that you are going to have relationships that are monetized.
Yeah, it's all transactional.
It's all transactional.
Yeah.
As you look at like maybe communities that don't have as much wealth, they've had to trade favors. They've had to do this mutual aid thing to just eke out a livable world for them. And it's almost then in some sense, people talk about like, who are the communities that are most at risk for the great unraveling? And I wonder, where does it going to really break? Some wealthy, like gated community where everybody's used to a DoorDash showing up and the house cleaner and the Mr. Fix-It come in to like take care of their gutters, or some neighborhood where people aren't that well off, but somebody's a plumber, somebody's an electrician, somebody's a farmer.
Right.
People are into childcare, people are do the basic healthcare stuff. There's nurses or whatever, and they haven't had money to pay for all the services, and so they've been exchanging favors for decades. Maybe they grow up in a community. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and second law of thermodynamics, gates rust and break down. I mean, how long is your gated community really going to be gated?
That. I mean, God, we can have a whole conversation around that, because on the one hand, you could easily argue that the people in communities of privilege and whose life experience has been one of privilege. Well, first of all, I would actually question whether it's true privilege, because they've, like you said, changed relationships into transactions.
Yes.
But you could say, oh man, their resilience is so fucking low that when the shit hits the fan, they don't know what the hell to do, right? Like it's we talked about Douglas Rushkoff, the billionaires worrying about like how they keep their armed guards loyal.
As money and private property rights are enforced.
And that's why they want to hold on to them as much as possible. So you could look at them and be like, actually, those guys are fucked. And the people who've had to struggle day to day more, and have networks, informal networks of mutual aid that exist, are more resilient. And I in general, I think that that's true. Unfortunately, at the same time, we're dealing with power dynamics where the people that are in privileged positions still have access to a lot of power, and they're going to do everything in their fucking power to maintain that as much as possible, and basically keep pulling out the meager resources of the 90% of the world, to maintain that as much as possible.
And to be honest, I mean, we're kind of in our own worlds in that same boat. Like, I'm going to work hard to protect, you talked about my house and my family, and like, I want to hang on to that. I want to keep it, and that's because we're kind of stuck in this private property setup that we've got. But, the guy that I ran into, he doesn't have that. He doesn't, maybe that's what he was upset about. He can't just walk around the corner and go sleep in a nice bed. Right?
I can't imagine.
I want to take it back though, Sherry. You started talking about how we all have to navigate this in-between space. And we've been calling it the liminal space, because I guess that's what that means, in between. And I don't think I understood that real well until I started experiencing this sort of thing. It's like you have to decide for yourself how much to engage or not engage. And it's not like you said with the litter, it's not all or nothing. You don't have to be a nut, because you can't solve everything. And that's one of the, I think, key points of our report, this Welcome to the Great Unraveling report. Another key point is something we bring up pretty regularly, or at least you two bring up, and that's to be smarter about how you process information. So like thinking in systems, thinking critically, and even thinking outside of the way maybe that we've been taught over time. Like, I know a lot of indigenous societies, they process community decisions much, much differently than a bunch of people living in their own houses in standard American town do nowadays.
Oh, HOAs doing a fantastic job. You're Rob, you're wrong about that. And it's school board meetings, they're fantastic too. Just as an example of people coming together.
In fact, I like it when the HOA and the school board meetings get combined. That's the liminal space I'm talking about.
The potlucks are fantastic.
I've been in some like places where it was like consensus-based decision making.
Yeah.
And what a double.
They're still meeting right now.
Well, that's the problem. It's this double-edged sword where you realize, oh, that's wonderful, because I've actually been in situations where you decide to like break the consensus and go Robert's Rule of Orders or whatever, and then somebody's always upset, and that upsetness lingers, and then it leads to problems later, and so you see why some of these traditional methods where they take forever to decide have to do with the fact that they want to bring the community along. And they want to incorporate, and they want to at least make people feel like they've been listened to so well. And I think the reason that could work in the past was that everything was so much slower, right? Like you were spending all this time in community. You had all these times to have conversations, right?
It was at the pace of biology.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're at the pace of technology.
Yeah, think of the Ents in Lord of the Rings,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
They had the Ent moot, and they would spend eons with the opening, right? Because they're trees,
Right. And so I think the problem we have now is like we grew up with this pace, and this pace requires a decision. I mean, how often nowadays are you upset because a decision isn't made in time?
Right.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
One thing, I don't know if you guys suffer from decision fatigue the way I do, but there's some times of the day where I'm like, I'm not making another decision.
Totally.
I can't do it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I would rather do hard physical labor than make a decision right now.
And this is the cost of complexity to society, where you have to have all these sort of, layers, these hierarchies, these bureaucracies, these levels of expertise. Because of course, you don't want someone who's not an advanced engineer to make a decision about the local bridges. Okay? But there's only so many people trained that well, and there's a process they have to go to make it transparent, and so you can see why, like, it just gets bogged down eventually. And this is sort of a tainter-esque sort of problem, right? The ability to actually manage and make decisions, you demand the speed, but humans can't. So, I got it. AI is going to take care of it.
Can I just say tainter-esque? You're talking Joseph Tainter. Yes, nothing about the taint.
Nothing about the wonderful perineum.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Perineum-esque.
Yes. Joseph Tainter, who wrote what? The Collapse of Complex Societies. Yeah.
The other thing about what you were saying, Jason, was, again, back to the transactional nature of relationships. We have this weird gap, I think, that's growing, right? Which is, things are kind of unraveling. Generally, people don't feel like they're doing well emotionally and mentally.
Right.
I just think, like,
even if materially are fine, you're aware of the other parts of the world.
I just think that there's a lot of shit going on, and it may be subterranean, subconscious, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have this like Karen phenomenon, like all these endless examples of people, who are acting out of their mind because they're upset that they're not getting their way about something, and it's like the combination of the fact that we've actually conditioned certain people in particular to expect things as the customer. The customer is always right.
Yeah.
And I live in this complex world, in this system where I want something, and I could put on my credit card, and boom, this thing materializes. And if it doesn't materialize right away, what the fuck is going on? And I'm mad.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And you take that and how we've been ingrained in that and trained, in that, and the relationships are very much this like this power dynamic of I'm the customer and you're the whoever, the worker. And we had a moment, right, where we're like, oh, these are essential workers. Let's clap for them. Do you know what I mean? But really, we didn't give two shits in the long run. And now things are not going to work as well. They're going to actually work much worse over time.
Have so much more patience.
And
oh my God.
How do we learn to actually have empathy and recognize that there is mutualism at play here. We have to give and in order to receive, and it's a rewiring.
Yeah.
Do we have the time to rewire in the way that we need to in order to actually be able to get through the shit that we need to get through? Because we're not going to get through it individually, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's a race, I think.
But it's a weird thing. It's like we both need to like slow down and lower expectations for the speed of which things can happen if we're going to work together better and be a community. And at the same time, events are happening so quickly that we kind of demand a rapid response.
And we need to respond.
We need to respond. So I think this is one of those predicaments.
Yeah.
But one of the really big keys to that is being in good shape yourself.
Yes.
Right? Like I was talking about decision fatigue. When I'm feeling that or when I'm administratively overloaded, or like I'm not a good person, right?
Yeah.
That's not the time I'm going to turn around and go talk to my friend who's struggling in the street, right?
Right.
And that was another of the cool things in the report. The Welcome to the Great Unraveling report. It talked about, what is it that you need to do as an individual to kind of steel yourself, to make yourself stronger, to be in this unsure time, to walk through that liminal space. And so how what are the characteristics of a psychologically resilient person? And I thought that was maybe that's a key thing that we can share with folks, just so they can start thinking about it. Maybe we can each just share some of it. I mean, a lot of people, I think, are under this myth that the ones who fare the best and who are the mentally healthiest are the optimists. The ones who are like, oh, you just make lemonade out of lemons. Or
I mean, have you seen Steven Pinker? He's like the happiest, most well-adjusted dude around.
Totally.
I mean, that's why he has photos of himself in his house.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not it. Obviously.
No, you've got to. I think the ability to be realistic as much as possible, to really accept, to observe without rose-tinted glasses on, to observe reality, and then make realistic assessment, and then plans accordingly. I think that's really important.
And even the Guy McPherson part, you don't have shit-tinted glasses either. It's like not rose-tinted, not like you said, observe and see realistically what's going on around you,
but not in a Spock way. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that's also a mechanism of avoidance in a sense, which is like, because I think somebody could interpret what you're saying, Jason, and think, okay, well, I just have to be very hyper rational, look at this situation dispassionately, and try to think about the best thing to do, which is true. I think we have to deal with reality. And at the same time, part of dealing with reality is actually sitting with, what this feels like, what this means, and processing that on some level, because holy shit, this stuff is heavy. And if we don't actually process some of that stuff, I don't think we're actually going to make rational decisions.
Yes. So not having an emotional intelligence that not only deals with your own emotions, but also maybe then can be empathetic to how others might be reacting.
So it comes to self-care.
Well, this leads, I think, to the second critical factor. There's 4 of these. So you just mentioned, the ability to be realistic, make realistic plans, and you added a share to that deal with your emotions as you're looking at this reality, especially if it's something that's hard to look at.
Yeah.
But the second one then is to have a positive self-concept and confidence in your own strengths and abilities. And that means obviously being able to recognize what your strengths and abilities are. And a lot of people, including presidents of the United States, kind of overstate their strengths and abilities.
Well, some people understate too.
Yeah.
So
it's why am I blanking on
Dunning-Kruger?
Yeah, thank you, Dunning-Kruger. Right. So I would add maybe a little caveat to that, which is it's important to recognize and acknowledge your own strengths and kind of lean into them and your own capacity, because I think we probably all have more capacity than we might recognize. And at the same time, good to recognize maybe where we don't have as many strengths. And that gets back to the mutualism, because like for a really stupid example, okay, my wife and I,
she compensates a lot for you.
She overcompensates. Yeah. But for example, I just learned, even though I'm quote unquote the man of the relationship, I have my spatial awareness sucks. I'm really bad at figuring out how to build things or do whatever. I'm great at doing it. She's great at reading instructions and kind of telling me what to do. So we sort of figured out in this situation, I'm not the dumbest person in the world, but when it comes to certain things, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I had to try to figure it out myself, I just don't have that brain, right? So just sort of understanding what our strengths are and recognizing that other people have different strengths and bringing them together, collectively probably is the best.
And having a positive self-concept. It's good that you you're an idiot when it comes to putting together a basketball hoop on the side of the house. So you just follow the directions of what to screw in where. But you're not kicking yourself for that. You're like, that's not my strength, but I can.
It took me a while
helpful.
to accept. It was a few basketball hoops landing on my head,
just like crashing on the windshield of the car.
Exactly. Took a little while.
Your boys in the hospital with a broken arm.
Boys are shaking their head. They're embarrassed to be associated with me.
You got the hoop sticking up and the backboard sticking horizontal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to invent a new game.
Okay.
Okay, so a third critical factor for being psychologically resilient is to develop your communication skills and applying those communication skills towards solving problems. And I mean, we see this all the time. Anybody does in a family, a work environment, dealing with the guy that I was talking to around the corner, and I feel bad. I keep calling him the guy. We know Roger the asshole, but I don't even know his name.
I want to call him Me because I was thinking about the Roger Me film.
Yeah, right. But being able to figure out how you can converse with the people that you're coming into contact with.
I think it's very simple. It's being directive and authoritarian. That's the way to communicate with people, right?
Oh,
it's my way or the highway.
Yes.
Right?
I have so much trouble with this where I think I'm doing a slow, clear communication and then people just haven't actually understood me. So I think that's a really hard one. And I don't get upset when people don't understand me. I just sort of like try to say it again. But yeah, that is amazing.
Can you repeat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But that is amazing. It's always more work than you think it's going to be.
I know.
It's absolutely astonishing. And I don't know how I'm having a hard time like recognizing that.
We've known each other for like 12 or 15 years, right? And I'm still waiting to understand one thing that you've said in that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's probably, I mean, honestly, that's about the most challenging thing there is. Be a good communicator. Go forth. Okay.
Well, this is about the time again, about like having the time. Like, do you feel you have the time to sit with somebody and say, okay, what do you believe? What do you believe? Like, explain to me what you heard me, or something like that. Like, that's the thing. It takes that kind of follow through often. But sometimes people are like, when my wife does this to me, sometimes I just roll my eyes. I'm just like, oh, come on, I got this. Leave me alone. Like,
spouses really enjoy when you roll your eyes at them. That's
like, you're going to make me repeat it back to you? You want me to repeat it back to you? Oh, God. Yeah, that kind of thing. But I understand why she does it. So I have to be more patient. Yeah,
patience, probably a key there.
Well, I'm seeing it as a constant process of learning how to be better listeners and more empathetic, and even stupid things like, I feel this way versus saying you are doing this,
right?
Even though they're absolutely wrong.
Yeah, I know, that's so tough.
Everybody else is always wrong.
Everyone else is wrong. That's why it's so much easier for Donald Trump.
Okay, well, here's
like certain about everything.
Here's a far easier one. This is the fourth and final critical factor in cultivating your own psychological resilience, and that's the ability to manage strong impulses and feelings.
This one's easy for me because I have no feelings. I just shut them all off, cut them off,
when
cauterize
you're sociopathic, it's simple.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I felt...
Easy peasy.
I felt so good. I don't even remember what I was pissed about. I think something fell out of a cabinet and hit me in the hand, and it hurt, and I didn't like it. And I had the thing in my hand, and I was about to just spike it on the floor, and I was like... I did the whole, lowering of the arm, all... clenched, and I was like, okay, and I set it down on the counter like, hey, I managed my idiot impulse.
I actually have a lot to say about this because so during the pandemic, one of our sons, I'm not going to name who it is because
one of two,
God forbid, one of two, was really struggling with online school, and there's a lot of anger because he's a very social being, and like the thing about school for him was the social interaction, and that was all taken away from him, and he would have these sort of emotional blow-ups, and he basically was unregulated. He was really struggling, and we actually wound up going to see, talking to a kind of a child and family therapist, and that was the first time I got introduced to the idea of the window of tolerance or the zone of tolerance. And we actually at PCI did kind of a session with one of our advisors, Leslie Davenport, who is a psychotherapist and works on climate psychotherapy in particular. And she was also introducing this concept to the staff, which is this idea of we get tipped basically. We become unregulated, so we become overstimulated, right? Or we become under. And these are different approaches or different ways of coping with stress. Things that create a big emotional reaction for us. So some of us flip our lids, or sometimes we flip our lids, and sometimes we just shut down emotionally, right?
Totally,
and people do in different ways based upon how they learn how to cope with these things. And building your window of tolerance is just about stretching your capacity to deal with stressful situations. So in your situation, Rob, when you got hurt by this thing, maybe the reaction to kind of like slam this thing on the ground is built up over all these other frustrations. And maybe because you read the fucking news about what's happening with temperatures in the North Atlantic, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so us being able to process and practice self-care and grow that window of tolerance allows us to deal with stressful situations better. And there are lots of things, there are actually exercises that people can do that teaches you what your things are. Like I learned from myself, petting my dog helped me re-regulate. Walking around the neighborhood helped me. Exercise helped me.
Yeah.
For different people, it's different things. Listening to music.
Yeah, I go birding.
Punching Rob in the face. You know?
That's a favorite pastime of everybody.
There's like a whole line. Do you remember Airplane?
Yeah.
There's that scene of like this woman freaking out and they're all lined up to like shake her and
they're like carrying baseball bats.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe a fun concluding exercise for us would be to take those 4 critical factors that help you develop and cultivate your psychological resilience and apply them to how I did in trying to work with this meeting with the guy on the street.
So we're talking about the ability to make realistic plans and take steps necessary to implement them, positive self-concept and confidence in your strengths and abilities, communication, problem-solving skills, and the ability to manage your feelings, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay. So that first one, ability to make realistic plans and take steps necessary to implement. I don't think I did a damn thing on that.
That doesn't really apply to this.
Yeah,
it's kind of in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that in retrospect it would have been calling to get the guy help, or like would you have intervened?
Yeah,
in some
that's
way?
actually a good point, because when you brought up here's the 3 responses, I hadn't even thought of that third one of call for some more professional, better help than what I'm going to be able to give. So like, I do think that would be doing that. That would be planning ahead and making realistic plans, would be running these scenarios in your mind and thinking, how might I play these out going forward?
It doesn't seem like he needed someone called for it.
Right.
But you didn't know that.
But I
found out.
I didn't. Yeah, I hadn't done that. So I give myself at best a C-, D+ on that one.
Oh.
Okay, so the second one is what you said, Asher. It's the positive self-concept and confidence in your strengths and abilities. I think I give myself a pass on this. I think I can talk to him just like he's my neighbor, because that's what he is to me. And I feel like I can at least kind of talk my way out of stuff too. Like if it was going to be more confrontational, I'm okay, and sort of disengaging if I need to. And I'm a pretty fast runner.
Yeah.
And
so you got that in your back pocket.
And I think I can fight, but I probably can't.
Just run.
Yeah, running is.
So is that definitely positive self-concept there?
And go for the eyes.
Try to bite eyes. Is that your? That's your.
You go for the eyes.
So
you
this
go
is
for
the
takeaway
of this whole conversation is
bite people's eyes.
This poor man who's clearly struggling, right, and beating himself up. You're gonna go and
bite his eyeballs.
Bite his eyeballs. Yeah. Makes sense. Right. Perfect sense.
So anyway, I think I get a passing grade on that one.
Yeah.
The third one then is what?
The communication, be able to communicate well and problem solve.
And I think I'm okay with that.
Oh, you're great at communication.
I think you're giving yourself a low score on that.
Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't there for this, but the truth of the matter is, you had a rapport with this dude, and you came back and you talked to him, and he was appreciative.
Well, and I did naturally, at least I think it was natural, approach it from like cart appreciation.
Oh, intent.
And I'm not a stuff guy really, but we were like kind of like, just checking out the carts and like, oh yeah, I like how yours is. Yeah, right. Right. No, there was very little butt sniffing, but I'll think of that next time. Maybe we'll put that in the realism.
That would not be good communication. Like, can I sniff your butt right now?
Yeah. Okay. So then The fourth one is the ability to manage strong impulses and feelings. And this is actually, I don't think I'm that good at this generally, but this one, flying colors this time, because my impulse was just like what you said. It was to go home,
drive a beer,
not deal with this at all. And I kind of overcame that and went back, and it ended much, much better.
Yes.
Now, a little punchline to this story. I went and saw him, and I told him to be kind to himself, please, and he thanked me, and we sort of ended on a second good note.
Okay.
And I walk around the corner again, and I get to the exact same spot, and then I hear this loud boom!
What?
And it scared the freaking daylights. Like, I was so adrenalized.
Yeah.
It was around the 4th of July, and it was just a fireworks, okay? It wasn't like a shooting or anything, but I was just like, I had just kind of gotten an adrenaline jolt to go back to talk to the guy after the, obscenity tirade. And now the damn firework. I felt like, I think people suffering from, like, vets who are suffering from PTSD have that kind of response. Just like, oh God, time to go home and get that beer.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story with us. And I think that there's some important lessons there. I am going to be thinking about this guy, though. I got to tell you, I don't know what he looks like, but I have a picture in my head.
Well, come on up, and we'll see if we can find him, and you can continue the conversation.
I hope we don't run into that Roger.
Yeah, fucking Roger.
Bite his eyes out.
Crazy town, da 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 da, crazy town.